Okay, so in this lesson, you were looking at how to get information in from the user actually running your program. And how you're dealing with that is with the input statement in Python. Okay, so how that works is whenever you have a program and the input statement is hit, it basically pauses and waits for the user to type something and hit enter. So let's say you had something on the screen like hi, and you put an input statement underneath it and ran the program. Okay, it's actually just waiting there for you to do something. Okay, and I can type in hello. Okay, and then the program will finish executing. So if I had another statement down here, how are you? All right. It's waiting, so it's not printing this last statement until I enter something, right, from the keyboard, okay, and it finishes the program. I mean, that's not overly useful. What we really want to be able to do is get information and then use it. So typically an input statement doesn't just hang out on its own here. It afterwards it stores something in a variable. Okay, so it might be something like this. So you might say print, say enter your favorite color, right? And then you might have a variable called favorite color equals input. Okay, and then maybe afterwards you might want to print that out to the screen. So you entered, right? And then we can, just like in the last lesson, right, we can print out the value of a variable, right? So this time I'm not hard coding it into my program. I'm waiting for the user to enter the information, right? So it says enter your favorite color. If I say blue, it says you entered blue. Okay? If I say red, right, you entered red. All right. Now, this is one way to go about doing that. That's probably not the typical way that you would use input statements. Input statements actually allow a string to be entered as kind of like a prompt. You should always prompt the user on what you actually want them to enter. You can't just assume they're going to know what's going on. Okay, so the more information that you give them, the better. So instead of using a print statement and then an input statement, it's often convention just to use an input statement, but put your prompt actually inside it like that. Okay. Right, so it says enter your favorite color. Right, so if you do it this way, that if you notice the difference, the cursor is actually staying on the same line as what you're going to type. I find that better. This looks kind of awkward. You do a print statement and then it kind of leaves the blank line before you type it in. I prefer this better. So if I type red, so you entered red. It still doesn't look the greatest from an outpoint point of view because it starts it like right off. So you certainly might want a space there. I usually put a colon, so you'll see me do that in most of my lessons. So when I run it, so it says enter your favorite color, and then it has a space and red. Okay, that looks kind of cleaner when you're running things. So that would be more something you might want to consider. It doesn't really matter for most of the programs that we're doing, but I mean, if you want to make it nice, then that's something that you should certainly consider. Okay. Now, the input statement will always read the data and consider it as a string. Okay, and that's totally fine if all you're doing is kind of printing things out to the screen because you're not manipulating it. However, if you're going to be doing some math with numbers that are entered in from the keyboard, then you can't do math calculations with strings, right? You need to tell Python that it's going to be a different type of data. So there are two functions that do that depending on whether you're converting to integers or to decimal values, and that's the int and the float command. So let's say we wanted to store a whole number, right? So you might have an input statements like please enter a whole number, okay? But I need that to be a integer. So what I do is I surround my input statement with an int statement like that. Okay, so what it will do is it will do this first. It follows Bedmus basically with brackets. So it does the inner bracket first, and it gets the input, and then it immediately converts that to an integer. So you won't notice anything if you printed it right away, but in Python's mind, it will now be a number. So you can manipulate it like a number and not like a string. Okay. So I mean, I can run the program. If I were to print it, okay, you're not going to notice any difference. So enter a whole number. 7 still prints 7. Okay. You do have to be careful though. I mean, like I can't enter if I'm telling it to enter a whole number and I write hello, okay, right? It can't do that. I mean, it will accept this as the input hello, but then it tries to convert hello into an integer, and that doesn't make sense to Python. Okay, so you do have to. The user does have to be somewhat intelligent when they run your programs as well. Okay. Same with something like this. If you try to enter a decimal and it's expecting a whole number, right? It can't convert the decimal number to the integer, so it'll say invalid literal. Okay. With base 10. So it's assuming that we're in the decimal number system, right? Okay, and if you wanted to say do a decimal number, right? Instead of writing int, you would write float. Okay, so for a floating point value, we'll print that. Okay. So again, so if I entered 7.5, now it kind of knows what's going on there. And the same error will occur if I enter the string, right? If I try to enter hello, right? It's not going to know how to do that conversion. But what it will do is, I should probably say enter a decimal number. Okay. What it will do is sorry, I'm just going to stop that so it prints it out. Okay, so it prints it out properly. If you did enter a whole number, okay, it will still work, right? So it can convert an integer into a decimal, but it can't convert a decimal into an integer like this. Okay, it just appends the decimal to whatever integer value that you entered. Okay, so it's really important that that actually happens. Okay, so when you're going to be doing math, you need to do that conversion. I've seen some students, they for some reason don't like to do it like with the input. They will start converting as they're using it. So some students might, so let's say I just want a number, and so they just say enter number. Okay. And we haven't done the math lesson yet, but I mean, it's pretty straightforward. They'll do the conversion when they're doing the math, and that's just, to me, doesn't make any sense, right? So they'll have a statement down here that says like new number equals 2 times int number. Okay, so they would do the conversion when they're doing the math, but they'd have to do that every single time they did when they use that variable. To me, that's just stupid. So if you need to have some forethought into what you're doing with the data that you're bringing into the program, and that will help you if you're ever using a different programming language like Java. Will make you define before you even use a variable what data type it is. And that actually kind of makes sense because different data types need different amounts of memory to actually store those values. So Python doesn't make you do that, but if you're going to transfer your skills to a different language, you might just need to get used to thinking about the types of data that you're getting in and how you're going to use it in your program, so you can store it as the right type immediately. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So now we can store values and variables, and we can get data from the keyboard, and in the next lesson we'll learn how to manipulate that data using math.